let's dive into the actual hands-on look at what you're going to see if you're developing with Synapse. So to start off, when you go into Synapse, you would usually use Synapse Studio for development. And here's the homepage. So it's got some quick links for you, ways to discover more, recent resources, etc. That's not where we spend most of our time though. Let's look at the data hub. So as we click on the different sections on the left, you can always expand and see the actual name. So the data hub is going to have all of your different resources that are available. So what I mean by that is if we have a Spark or serverless SQL metadata layer, that will show up in the Lake database section or in the SQL database section as this built-in data type. If we hover over here, we can see it describes it as a serverless SQL pool resource. So that's where we're going to access data that's basically within Synapse and available via Spark and via serverless SQL. There's another concept within Synapse of dedicated SQL. This is our high-powered, more expensive, massive parallel processing database. And that's going to look more like this. See that the logo is a little different. If you hover over it, it'll tell you. And this is where, I'm not sure how much I have in here. This is where we'll see some more tightly defined tables with things like distribution properties and how we want to do indexing and a lot of the decisions that need to be made to serve up the data quickly for analytics in particular. Those happen here in the dedicated SQL. With serverless SQL, we do some data types and things like that as we define schemas, but it's a little more for exploratory. So we have dedicated SQL database, we have our built-in or serverless SQL databases, and then we have our Lake database, which is created via Synapse Spark. But most of those tables within your Lake database are queryable from serverless SQL. Going from there, you can also link in other data sources. And so one of the things you'll find a lot is you will have a primary Azure Data Lake storage, which is just a certain type of Azure storage that's meant for big data analytics, like Synapse in general is meant for. And from there, if you have the right permissions, and you do need quite a bit of permissions from what I've seen in order to be able to do this from the UI, you can browse the different containers and folders within your Azure Data Lake storage. You can also link additional data sets that are stored within Azure Storage, whether it's blob storage or Data Lake storage. As you can see, I have a few different scenarios here. And if you haven't seen this before, you can even do things like plus browse gallery and go find data sets that are sample data sets that are available for you to get started easily on your own. So keep an eye out for the recommendations on charging. If it's stored within a certain region, you may want to deploy your Synapse workspace in that region if you're going to work with this data a lot. Or maybe if the storage costs aren't too bad for you, ingest the data to your own storage account so you aren't crossing regions as you play with the data. But that's kind of just a tip to save you some money when you get into this. We won't go too deep on this right now. Instead, let's keep looking at what else is available within Synapse. So that's our data hub. And a lot of times you use that to browse the data and maybe start some queries via right clicking and choosing select all. Let me do that. It's a little bit jumping forward in the demo, but let's jump over here and say, if I take my Lake database, find a table there, such as my taxi zone, I can right click and either do a new SQL script. In this case, it'd be serverless SQL, or I could do a new notebook, which means I'm going to be using Apache Spark. If I run that, let's go ahead and do serverless SQL to start. It's going to pull up a very simple T-SQL query, and it's going to default to running on my built-in pool. If it doesn't, you may want to check that. Make sure you're under your serverless section here. You don't need to run on dedicated, and this actually isn't going to be accessible from dedicated. So there's the error you get if you're running on the wrong type of resource. If I go back to built-in and run this, what's at a top 100 shouldn't take too long for such a small data set to get me some results here. So there, when I'm using built-in resource, I can get that query back in 11 seconds this time. Let's see if I run it again. Is it going to be a little bit faster? Yeah, it's cached a little bit or done some statistics in the background. It's going to be a little faster next time around. Chances are it also had to kind of get connected to some resources as well. As always, if you want to keep hearing content about data engineering, particularly in Azure, please subscribe to the channel, like this video if it was helpful for you, and see you next time.